Welcome back to Not So Grand Garage. Got another late night ahead of me. Going to be revamping the cooling system on the flatbed. I've got a Champion radiator in this truck. I've got the 4-row, and it is known for springing leaks. And what do you know, this one has. But Champion replaced it without question. They shipped me a new one, which I requested the 3-row to replace it, because those are known for holding up a lot better. So while I'm at it, we're going to go on and put in new water pump, got a new Motorcraft thermostat, we're going to flush cooling system out, change the oil, and a few other piddly things I've got to do. So yeah, let's get started. I've already got the coolant drained out of the radiator, so I'm going to go on and get this fan shroud loose, set it back, get the upper and lower radiator hoses off, and get the radiator pulled. To pull the radiator, or pull the fan shroud on these, they've got bolts at the top on both sides of the shroud. Take those bolts out, then it will slide out of the little brackets down the bottom and slide it towards the engine. It'll go over the fan. Then you'll loosen up the radiator hoses top and bottom. If you got the automatic transmission, you'll have to undo the cooler lines. And then there's 2 bolts on each side of the radiator that hold it to the core support. It'll be ready to come out. So, quick correction. There's actually bolts top and bottom, or at least they're supposed to be. On mine, the bottom bolts have been missing for quite some time. It's just got 2 zip ties on the bottom holding it up against the radiator core. So yeah, just wanted to correct on that. But got the fan shroud pulled back. As you can see, there's now room to work. So I'm going to take this clamp loose, get this hose off and out of the way, go down underneath, get the bottom hose off, and then there's 4 bolts that hold this in, and it's ready to come out. I got this radiator out, and you can see where it's been leaking down this side, and it had started on the other side as well, but it wasn't leaking too bad. I wasn't having to add coolant to it, and I just noticed the leak recently, and that's why I kind of want to come back to Champion and what they did. So I bought this radiator, this original one, this 4-row. It's been probably 6 years, something like that, 6 years ago. I bought it from Champion's eBay store, and I could not find my listing. I didn't have the receipt, didn't have anything. So I knew it had a lifetime warranty on it when I bought it. So I got online, found their information, gave them a call. And within 15 minutes of being on the phone with them, they'd already found my information. They knew what I bought, and all they asked for was a picture just to verify it was in fact their radiator. Sent them a picture, and they shipped out a replacement the same day, and they went on and shipped me the 3-row as I requested that one, because I've had several 3-rows, and they've never had any leaks, never had any issues with cooling or anything like that. So since these are prone to leaking, I decided to go with that. They said if it ever became an issue, they'd go on and bump it back up to the 4-row without question, because that's what I originally bought. So yeah, their customer service is on point. But anyways, got this out, no problem. Now I'm going to climb back up in here. Oh. So I put a fan clutch on this thing not too long ago. It's a Ford or a Fomoco Motorcraft, yeah, Motorcraft fan clutch. Got from Rock Auto. They had them on sale for like 30 bucks. So I snagged one of these. I got another one on the shelf because, well, you can't beat it for that price. But I'm going to go on and pull the fan shroud out. Then I'm going to pull the fan clutch off, pull the belt off, and go on and pull the water pump, because the water pump's original on this truck, and I know it's got over 200,000 on it. So gonna go on and replace it while I'm here, and we're gonna go on and put a thermostat in it too. Although the thermostat is not that old, I replaced it and the hoses and all that stuff when I put this engine in this truck. So it's probably got 15, 20,000, 30,000 miles on it, something like that. Nothing too crazy because I wasn't driving this thing all the time. But while I'm here, I'm going to go on and replace it all. So I'm not replacing the hoses because, like I said, they don't have that many miles on them. They're all in really good shape, so no issues there. I do have a coolant filter set up over here, so I'm going to replace the filter as well, and I'm going to go through and check all the hose clamps, make sure all that's tight and everything. So yeah, let's keep going and get this water pump torn off. Let's see. Lyle fan clutch tool, game changer. Absolute game changer. If you're doing these with any consistency, it's worth the money to scoop one up. For sure. No more beating on these things with pipe wrenches and everything else, trying to, you know, tear stuff up potentially. This does wonders. But hey, if you're not doing this stuff relatively consistently, pipe wrench or big crescent wrench will get you by. Next up, I'm going to go on and pull these bolts here out of the water pump pulley, and then I will pull the serpentine belt off, get it out of the way, and I should then have room to pull the water pump. So I'll disconnect the heater hose and what have you, but pull the water pump, and I will also climb underneath and pull the block drains on both sides. I was running a cat rated ELC for coolant in this thing, and I'm just going back to a standard coolant. It's easier to find, it's cheaper, and really I don't mind servicing the cooling system every 3 or 4 years. Considering how often I drive this thing, it's not a big deal. So I'm not really seeing any benefit in running the ELC, and with the coolant filter and everything else on this thing, the cooling system stays really clean anyways. So let's get this torn apart. So I got the belt off, and I went on, like I said, loosen these bolts up while the belt was still on it, so you don't have to fight that. But while you're at it, go on and check all your pulleys, your idler, your tensioner for play. Mine are all fairly new. They've got probably 10 or 15,000 miles on them, so not going to worry about them too much. Check your alternator and stuff like that. Make sure nothing feels loose or weird while you've got it apart. So if you've got any problems coming up, you can go on and address them while it's all apart. But anyways, I'm going to pull this heater hose off and go on and get the water pump pulley pulled and get the water pump off. So I got the water pump pulley off. Now, as you can imagine, this pulley can get seized on the snout of the water pump with a little bit of rust and so on and so forth. So just tap on the face of that pulley. Don't beat the snout out of it because you'll bend it, but that will break it loose. Another suggestion, go on and pull this fitting right here out of the water pump with the water pump still bolted to the engine, if you can, because it is a pain to get these out with the water pump not attached to anything. Even in a vise, this can fight you a little bit. So yeah. So I've got the water pump pulled. I got to clean this gasket surface up a little bit. I did go in and pull the block drains and drain the coolant out of the block, which like I said, I'm going to be changing from an ELC back to a standard coolant. So I'm going to be flushing all that out anyways. I got 12 gallons of distilled water. So once I get everything back together, I'm going to fill the whole system up with distilled water, dump it all back out again, and I may do that twice. Haven't decided yet. But anyways, gonna get this surface cleaned up and get the water pump put back on and just work our way back out. Get the pulley put back on, fan clutch, fan shroud, drop the new radiator in, and we can start filling things up. I'm gonna go on and drop all this hardware in the ultrasonic cleaner, get all the goop off of it, because it's looking quite nasty. From the looks of the water pump, I'd say it's been replaced at some point. Heck, I may have replaced it and just forgot, but I already had this torn down, so for the price, might as well replace it again. But yeah, we'll keep going. Well, we've got our gasket surface and everything cleaned up down here for the water pump. So now it's time to prep the water pump and get it ready to go on. I like to use high-tack. It's a gasket adhesive, basically. It really helps prevent leaks in areas like this, and it keeps the gasket in place when you're bolting everything up. I did go on, probably can't see them in there, but I threw all the hardware and the pulleys and such in the ultrasonic cleaner and let them run for a good bit. So they are clean. So yeah, all that's left to do is get the water pump back on and start putting everything back together. So we've got our new water pump in, got all the fittings put back in, which yeah, didn't need that. Just a side note, go on and put these fittings in with the pump off, or at least this one here. It can be a little tight. I've got a Banks adapter on here for the crankcase ventilation, so that makes it really tight getting anything in there. But if you don't have this, it won't be an issue. But next up is to pull the alternator and the alternator bracket, which I'm gonna leave the alternator attached to the bracket. Just unbolt the bracket, drop it down out of the way so we can get to the thermostat housing. So got the alternator bracket, alternator still on the bracket, set down out of the way. You got one bolt here, and then this housing comes off, your thermostat's in there. Another pretty important note, I got the thermostat housing off. Thermostat is still down here. I'm gonna pick this up. This is the Motorcraft thermostat. This is the only one to run in these IDI engines. The parts store ones are a different design and they do not work right. So I think this one's like 19 or 20 bucks, something like that. So get the right one. I'll post the part number up for it just in case y'all don't have it. So here is the correct Motorcraft thermostat. Comes with the housing, gasket, and everything you need. It's RT1049. Ford part number E5TZ8575C. This is the right one you need. Don't go with that part store crap. Now we're going to get this gasket cleaned up. Our check ball's still in place, so we're good there. Get this gasket area cleaned up, get the block cleaned up, and get this put back together. So, got our housing surface clean, got our block surface down there cleaned up. So how these go in, thermostat goes in, no gasket on the actual thermostat. It sets down in a little groove, and then the gasket goes down over it, which the gasket will seal that up. So I'm gonna go on and coat our gasket, get it put in place on the housing, and then get the housing bolted back on. So, got our alternator bracket back on, got thermostat housing all sealed up, heater hose hooked back up, got the water pump pulley slid back on, just one bolt in it for now until I get the belt on. And I'm gonna Loctite all 4 bolts and snug them down real good. And yeah, all that's left now is to get the fan shroud, and the radiator all put back in, and then I can start flushing everything out real good. I believe I'm going to leave the block drains out for now, and I'm going to flush everything out with tap water once it's once it's all back together. Then I'm going to spin on the new coolant filter and flush it out with distilled water. So we're getting there. Well, radiator's in, everything's buttoned up. All our hoses are connected, all our clamps are tight. So now all that's left is to drag the hose over here. Still got the block drains out down the bottom, so I'm gonna start filling the system up and just letting it dump out of the block drains. Flush it out really good, and then I will let it drain out completely. I'll empty the radiator as well and put the block drains back in, fill the whole system up with distilled water, dump it back out. Might do that twice. Depends on how much distilled water I've got. If I've got enough to do it, I'll do it twice. If I don't, I'll only do it once. But that should get us ready to refill the system with coolant. Well, it's a little after 2 in the morning, and I'm doing the final fill. I ended up just doing one. I put the block drains back in and filled the system up with distilled water. Let it sit, let it purge all the air out, dumped it all back out, and called it good. So now we're doing the final fill, and we're using 50/50 fleet charge. It's pre-charged with the SCA additives that fight cavitation, all that stuff, which is important in these IDIs. So one of the reasons I went with an ELC before is because you don't have to have any additives in it, but it's just a bit of a hassle. So anyways, we're going to work this air out of the system, and probably we'll probably wrap it up for the night, because I'm not going to start this thing this late. But yeah, I got some other piddly things to do to it in the morning. I want to correct some fuel system issues I've been having. I think I've got a little bit of an air leak, so I'm going to check my lines and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm going to go on and finish filling this up, and then I'm going to call it, and we'll wrap this up in the morning. Well, we're back out here this morning, and everything's pretty well ready to go. I did go on and put the bolts back in the filter housing, and I used my fan clutch tool, gave it a couple wraps with that to make sure that fan clutch isn't going to come off, at least without me wanting it to. Got the system filled back up, and now I'm ready to just start it and let it purge any air out of it. And after that, I will pull this off, and I'll go on and pressure test it as well, make sure I don't have any leaks. So I let this cool off a bit, and I topped the radiator back up. Now I'm going to go on and pressure test this. I'm going to run it up to approximately 13 psi, and we will see if it holds. I'll get underneath and make sure we don't have any drips, and we'll make sure we don't have any pressure loss. So I've brought it up to the 13-14 psi test point. So I'm gonna let it sit here for a little bit. Also gonna slide under here, see if we've got any consistent drips. I'm not seeing anything consistent. I mean, sure, there's going to be a couple little drops here and there from stuff that's been spilled and everything else. But so far, we're holding pressure spot on. So I'll give this, 5 minutes or so just to see where we're at. And if it hasn't lost any pressure, we'll call it good to go. Well, let's get you in here. It's been about 5 minutes. And hasn't dropped at all. There's not been any drips or anything, and I took a light and checked all the welds on the top tank and bottom tank of the radiator, see if I saw anything starting to seep or anything. Everything looks good. I don't see any seepage around the water pump or the thermostat housing. So I think we've got this one sorted out. So we'll release pressure off of this and get this mess cleaned up, get the overflow tank hooked up, and the cooling system should be done. Well, got everything buttoned up, got our overflow tube hooked up, and the overflow tank filled up to the hot level. Now, on these tanks, there is level markings on them. The top one being full when hot, the bottom one being full when cold. So be sure you keep your overflow tank topped up, and be sure you don't have any leaks between here and here. Reason being, if you've got any pinholes or anything in this hose, it will push coolant from the radiator as it warms up and the water and coolant expands. It'll fill this tank up, but if it's got a pinhole in this tube, it'll suck air when it starts to cool back down. How this system works, as the system warms up, comes up to operating temperature, system builds pressure, it will release coolant into the overflow tank. It doesn't happen because it's overheating or anything else. That's just normal. The expansion of the water has to go somewhere. As it cools off, it will draw water back from this tank and keep the cooling system full, and that will maintain the coolant level all the time. Well, that about wraps up the cooling system on the flatbed. As you can see, I've got a giant mess to clean up, and once again I'm doing work in the driveway on my stuff because the shop is full. That's just how she goes some days. So anyways, like I said, I'm gonna get this cleaned up. If y'all got any comments, questions, complaints, anything like that, drop it in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to stay on top of that. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We appreciate you watching.